Good morning again. I think it's the morning. My name's Tim. I'm from Walmart. I'm part of the FinOps team, but notice I'm not saying that I lead the FinOps team. The FinOps team is a very collaborative group. It is really multi-department, and that's key. So my job title always changes, so I'm never really sure which one it is. But let's talk about the agenda right now. We're going to talk about Walmart Global Tech and give you a little bit of a background as to who we are, what we do. And we're going to talk about how do you foster FinOps engagement. And that's one of the things that's important. JR talks about it a lot, Mike as well, is how do you get people to engage? And then I'm going to talk a little bit about how we've designed a collaborative function. It's still in process, really. I mean, we have a structure, but it's always changing. And then lastly, I'm going to talk about how do we identify efficiency opportunities, which is not as easy as people think it is. So first, let's talk about how to foster engagement. So again, I'm going to talk about Sam. Sam was our founder, and I think you might have known about cloud a couple decades before it happened. But again, rule 9 is control your expenses better than your competition. But this is where you can always find the competitive advantage. And then it goes on. You can make a lot of different mistakes and still recover if you run an efficient operation. I talked a little bit in the keynote about how efficiency is not just cost. It's a bunch of other things related to readiness and stability. And the other is swim upstream. I like this one because it's like, think for yourself. Go the other way. Don't just do it because other people are doing it. And I think when you think about cost control, the year we started to use cloud, we were focused on cost savings. And what I've noticed in talking to a lot of industry partners is some of them are just starting now, right? They're like, well, it's cloud. Spend as much as it takes. From day one at Walmart, every associate from our CEO to the associate that started at the store this morning, one of the things they get told to do is focus on saving money so we can help our customers live better. And that really is our core value. You saw the larger core value in the keynote. Even before you start working for Walmart, I want to call out that we have a careers website. We're always hiring, careers.walmart.com/values. Even before you start, we're trying to get you to think about this core efficiency. So we've got a little bit of a head start on a lot of companies in that it's built into our DNA. So what do we do to motivate people to pay attention to FinOps? These are the 3 things I want to talk about. Focusing on daily spend. Talked a little bit about this already this morning. I'm going to reiterate some of it. Make daily change relevant. I'll use some examples. And the other is relate impact to customers, right? So we're here for a reason. We're here to serve customers. We're here to support our associates. So let's talk about daily spend. This is a screenshot of one of our reports. And a really important point I want to make to people is I'm not going into dollar figures in this meeting. I don't want to give away any secrets in terms of the magnitude of our spend. I can tell you it's significant. And what you're seeing here is a reduction for a project. And this is, by the way, this is a tool that Carl Kraft worked on. He's sitting right there. So we focus every engineering team in Omnichannel right now. How much do you spend every day? And what do you spend it on? And it's relevant for projects, but then groups of projects, departments, pillars, the sub-pillars. So pay attention to that every day. And it starts to train you to really get a handle of what you're spending that money on. And just to be direct here, when we started doing this, some of the teams were like, can you stop bugging me about my daily rate? I mean, we're going to manage to plan over the year. I'm like, okay. But we kept on bugging them about daily rate. What's important about cost savings, and what some of you probably realize, is cost savings is always easy to do tomorrow, right? And then tomorrow comes, you're like, well, let's just do that tomorrow. That daily discipline is something where you're training people to manage to budget, and you're making it more immediate. You're making it incremental. It's easier to drive down your cost by $100 a day than it is to tell somebody, I need you to drive it down for more than that. The other thing we do, and this is what I have to do a lot, you have to annualize spend a lot. So someone might come to you and be like, well, we could do that. We got to move to that new SKU. It's going to take a lot of work. And they'd be like, well, it's only $500 a day. And it would be like, dude, hold on. If I put $182,000 in a suitcase and told you it was somewhere in the building, you and a team of 20 people would take the whole day and go look for it, right? And that's serious money. So getting people to comprehend daily spend changes and annualize them and make them personal, that is way easier to do when you have that daily rate. At our scale, if you think about your annual budget or your monthly budget, those are just not numbers that you can relate to personally. But if you focus on that day rate, you're like, okay, how many cups of coffee is $500 a day? So that's one of our secrets, is really making it personal and using numbers that people can relate to. And the last thing we do, and this is a picture of an associate in our new market fulfillment center in Store 100, that's in Bentonville, Arkansas. And he's using an automated fulfillment system. And that's going to change the way that we do fulfillment. Relate waste to customer experience, right? So if you waste money, sometimes we get people to think about, well, how much merchandise had to be moved for you to run that wasteful VM? And what are you expecting our customers to do to compensate? How much more revenue would have to be generated if you use the wrong database? And that's something that's important, is that all of your business, you need to relate your savings to your business and relate it to your customers. We are here for one reason, and one reason only. It's to help our customers save money so they can live better. And so that's directly related to FinOps. Lastly, that daily spend awareness. We train those teams to be aware of spend at all levels. So it could be a team of developers, what's it called, like a pizza box team, right? 2 pizzas. But it could also be a larger group, or it could be a VP. And my goal is that everybody at every executive level is gonna wake up every morning and think, I'm spending this much every day, and I'm gonna be able to track that trend over time. So engineers and managers, that daily spend focuses on awareness of architecture. How much did it cost to move to a new architecture? But then like stuff like storage, right? Storage is the oft forgotten technology. You know, you're gonna throw a bunch of petabytes to a storage bucket somewhere. We want you to really pay attention to what class it is. Is it standard? Is it cold? Is it archive? And then, again, I said this in the keynote, if you're paying attention to that daily rate, you're way more likely to be the person on the incident call who's like, I got it. I know exactly where to look. I know exactly what's running. If you don't get that daily discipline, then I liken it to like, you know, a basketball team that doesn't really practice every day. So it's practice. It really keeps you sharp. What we do, and again, notice I'm not sharing any numbers, but what I'm telling you is this is one of our sort of spend trends. And I just want to be clear, not all of our spend goes down. There are certain areas that are growing. There are certain areas where we're trying to reduce spend. We set daily targets. And so those daily spend targets, the daily view is tactical, right? It's day to day. It's what are we doing tomorrow? How are we saving money? The spend targets allow you to set strategic goals. So we say your spend is here. We'd love for it to be here in a month. Let us know how you need us to help you make the decisions that you need to make to get there. And that's another thing I'll talk about, which is the savings is for the teams to achieve. At scale, you cannot create a FinOps team that's going to do all the savings for everybody. You really need to get it to be built into every team's mindset. We establish daily spend goals. You can see this is a fictional company. And we say, okay, for the base week, the first week of May, that was your spend. Your target for the first day of October is this. And then we set a glide path over time. And this is similar to one of the reports that we generate. Of course, it's not real data. I want to be clear. But we do this, and this is something that we send executives every week. We say, we'd love for you to get on your glide path. And think about a glide path when you landed at the airport. It was good that your pilot stuck to that glide path, because it means you're here. Thank you. So collaborate. I want to talk about collaboration. So collaboration is the most important thing. A lot of companies hire a FinOps team, and they give them like a month, and they're like, where are all the savings? You're like, no, that's not how it works. When you do FinOps, one of the things you'll notice is, especially in the midst of an emphasis on savings, everyone wants to compete with each other to claim those savings. Everyone wants to be the person who's like, well, I came up with that idea. I created that dashboard. You really want to avoid creating a competitive mindset for FinOps. So one of the things that I'm going to talk about here are anti-patterns, how to build the right relationships, and how to design that collaborative org. First, and I want everyone in the room to know, these are not anti-patterns we have at Walmart. These are anti-patterns I have seen in the industry. We've done everything we can to avoid all of this. The know-it-alls, that's one of the anti-patterns I see for FinOps. It's so frequent. Like someone shows up and says, I know what to do. It's easy. Just run a report and then scale it all down. And like, yeah, I've seen that happen a couple times. No, it's not that easy. I said this in my keynote. Different parts of the business have different parameters for risk. And if you walk into an entire country's worth of IT infrastructure, you have to say like, hey, wait. You have to know people to be able to say, this is what I recommend you do. And you have to understand what risk is involved for scaling up and scaling down. There are certain things that we run that cannot fail, ever. So I think I skipped ahead by mistake. Next is the shamers. So I've fallen into this bucket before. The way to get people to save money is to create reports that just gets everybody in trouble all the time. So once a week, we're gonna create a report. These are the top 10 offenders, and you better get to work. And that works. Short term, that's a great way to save money. Long term, you don't build the right relationships with your customer. You can't be seen as the team that's gonna run the report that gets people in trouble. It doesn't create that collaborative magic. So, and the other is that's my data. And I've seen this occasionally in different orgs, not so much in Walmart. We have a commitment to sharing our data. But sometimes somebody will show up with a magical piece of data that really gets down to the bottom of some savings. And they're like, well, you want access to the data? Well, can you tell me what you're gonna do with it? And that goes back to the idea that people want to claim credit for the idea. At Walmart, we really do have a commitment for cost data where there's a core group of people who have root access, and we have a team that has full access to whatever they want. No questions asked, across multiple departments. And that is one of the most important things I think we do. So the know-it-alls, wrong accountability. You have a FinOps team that shows up and says, I know all the answers. You're not gonna train people to have that discipline, that self-ownership, that motivation. The shamers, bad relationships. The FinOps team that's focused on shame won't be around much longer. And then if you have a team that's trying to focus and hold on to their data, there will be no trust. The team that protects the data, the utilization data or the cost data, they're gonna come up with dashboards, and all the other teams are gonna be like, well, how did you get to that conclusion? And so you really need to have that open, almost an academic approach to some of these utilization discussions. Organization design. So we've been working with a bunch of partners, and this is really what we've come down to. And then I want to make it clear, we don't have one FinOps team. We do have a central core FinOps support team, but that core FinOps support function is split between multiple departments. And our steerco is also distributed across several departments. What's important about FinOps is to know that it is really a practice that should happen throughout a number of areas. Right? FinOps is not a team, it's a practice. And if you don't get that right, what you end up doing is you create a FinOps team, and then 6 months later, the CEO says, where's all the money? Where are all the savings? But here, we have technology platform teams that partner with FinOps. We have customer pillar teams. We have a platform group that creates some really cutting-edge, state-of-the-art systems that help us use cloud. And our customer pillar teams are focused on markets like US, international, SAMs. And so the idea for the core FinOps support team is that we're bridging the gap between those two areas. And the core FinOps support team works at the behest of the steerco. The steerco is all the EVPs, all the SVPs, their delegates, and they're the ones that come up with our standards. What's our baseline utilization standard? How do we track exceptions? How do we track progress? And that's really important. So that helps us avoid all of the anti-patterns. So, who claims credit for savings? Not FinOps. That surprises people. People maybe thought they were going to go to the FinOps X conference and figure out how to get promoted. And I want to tell you something that's important. Your job at FinOps is to get everyone else promoted. It's not to get promoted. You want FinOps to be the team that makes sure you don't have a fight between who gets to claim savings for. In this example, let's say we have a Cassandra team, hypothetically. I'm not telling you we have a Cassandra team. Let's say we have a Cassandra team, NoSQL database, in case you're not aware, that identified 4 million in savings for an engineering team. So they did an analysis for one of the engineering teams and said, you can save 4 million. And they have to communicate that to the engineering team. That's important. Sometimes you'll see teams communicate it to management. But they communicate to the engineering team has to do work to realize that savings. That's another part of FinOps that people don't realize. You can't just run a report. You actually have to follow through. At the end of the day, who gets credit for that savings? It sounds crazy to have to answer that question, but a lot of you in orgs that run FinOps teams are constantly looking at teams that are like, well, that was our idea, so we get the credit, especially if it's attached to budget discussions. The right answer is both teams work together to save money, and frankly, for us, they did it for the customer, right? And so that's built into our values. We're here to save money and live better. We're here to let the customers do that. So, but again, it's not your job to get promoted. It's your job to get everybody else promoted. So if you do assign savings credits, that has long-term consequences. One of the consequences is year over year, you don't build any follow-through. If one of those teams doesn't get the credit, they'll be like, oh, why bother? We didn't get the credit last year. You gave it to that team. So why bother engaging with that team again? It doesn't create good communicative structure. If you award collaboration, you're like, you want a promotion? Work with that FinOps team. Their job is to help you succeed. And I really do believe that. If you have a FinOps team that's trying to get out in front of management and say they're the reason why the company is saving money, watch out. It's not going to last long. You need to have a FinOps team that's more like a coach than a star player. All right, I've got about 10 minutes left. We're going to talk about efficiency opportunities, and then I'll get to questions. This is how I think most people think about FinOps. You're going to hire a FinOps team. You've got a bunch of platform teams, maybe a bunch of technical teams out there. And the FinOps team is going to be in charge of generating all the right dashboards and all the right reports. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen this pattern happen. An app team says to a FinOps team, well, send us the list of savings and we'll do what you tell us to do. And it's like, phew, man. At the scale that we operate, there's no way that a FinOps team of even 50 people could be able to track the architecture, the complexity, everything that goes into applications. You know, think about pharmacy, think about our fleet of trucks, think about Sam's Club, International, all the countries that we're in. For you to really do efficiency right, you've got to actually be an architect or an engineer on that team. It is true, FinOps can help the right teams write the right dashboards to identify some global opportunities, and we do that. We do a lot of strategic reporting, and I would identify, hey, okay, Cassandra's a target, run a report, but ultimately, we need those application teams to communicate with the technology teams directly. This pattern right here does not work. So what does work is you have a direct relationship between the teams and the technology experts. And this is the model we are moving towards. The steerco defines standards for all of the technology teams, the 20, 30, 40 technology teams that are experts in Gen AI, or compute, or storage, or Cassandra, or Kafka, or Solar Cloud, or some of the 20,000 PaaS services we use on public. And those are the teams that are the PhDs in their area. Those are the teams that come up with the standards. The application teams are then measured on the shared opportunities that are recorded in an exchange. FinOps is not here to judge whether those shared opportunities can or cannot be acted on. They're really just here to measure, is there communication? Is there collaboration? Is there progress? It's not that we want all the opportunities to go down to zero. We just want to make sure that people are collaborating. So this is the model that we're working on right now. Every technology team, Cassandra, Kafka, Solar Cloud, they're going to generate a list of red light opportunities. And these are the things that are non-negotiable. An example, is there an empty Cassandra days? I can't talk. Is there an empty Cassandra database running for 6 months? That is probably not a conversation as much as it's just a finding that needs to be acted upon immediately. Is there a Kafka queue or topic that's not being used at all? Let's save money and turn that off. Those are your red lights. Not a problem, not controversial. Yellow lights are the things that are warnings. Things where, okay, so your maximum CPU utilization was 40%. And we think that that might be a little bit too low. We need to have some response to a ticket. We need you to take a look at what this is. But there's several reasons why that might be acceptable. For yellow lights, we need to record that there was an interaction and there was a response. And that response can be positive or negative. It could be, hey, we're pharmacy, we're the most important thing in the world, leave us alone. And I'm not picking on pharmacy, I just want to be clear that not all efficiency opportunities are easy wins. We have an open efficiency opportunity exchange, and this is something that we are building. We're still working on the standards for it, and we're going to try to run this as an inner source project. So it's multi-department, right? And this is where we have the steerco, we have a collaborative group of people who are showing up to the conversation and saying, I have an idea. And that needs to be open. You know, when it comes to efficiency, some of your senior leadership might have some great ideas. We have an EVP who's really focused on Z standard compression and wants us to use it. But we also have, you know, a junior software developer who just started last week who really knows a lot about Cassandra. Running it as an open source or an inner source effort allows you to really have an open exchange of ideas. And that's where we want to have a standard where all the tech teams are running queries against a shared set of data for cost and utilization, and those queries are open source. You can go check out what that is. So if you have questions about the red light or the yellow light problems, you can go look at the data yourself. And so this is really the collaborative inner source approach to savings. It's something where at scale, what I will tell you all is that it's modeled after open source, and it's trying to avoid us having one center of gravity that owns it. We're trying to make it collaborative and completely transparent. So that is the end of my presentation. I'm not sure if I ended early, but it was much easier to give than a keynote, for the record.
All right. If you have questions, I see one question over there. I love this thing. I'm not going to throw it that far. My arm's not. I mean, I could try. It would be disastrous. Okay. Well, I am going to throw it, though, because it's fun. So, are you ready?
Hi, thanks for your conversation today. My question is, you mentioned a large global organization needs to scale. So when you're submitting tickets, A, is that process automated? And to whom do the tickets go? The application owner who's ultimately responsible for total cost, or that junior software developer who actually touches the resource and can make the change?
That is a good question, because it zeroes in on the most difficult thing to answer. So we have a tagging strategy. We tag everything at the product level. We also have an application level tagging. Applications are at a lower level than product, but we tag at the product level. So, and that's like search, right? So those tickets are filed and they go to the leadership of that team. So we're not sending tickets down to every developer. I mean, quite frankly, let's say you have 1,000 developers. We don't want 1,000 developers having to deal with this every day. But we do go up to their managers and we say, these are the tickets that we're going to measure your response against. But then also, I just want to call out something. There is a discussion internally about tickets. So we use a lot of tickets for everything. And sometimes you can run an efficiency query that generates 20,000 things. So one of the ongoing conversations is, what do we use tickets for? What do we just use a report for? And for the red lights, tickets. For those yellow lights, we're going to move more towards a report. Does that make sense? But yeah.
Ready?
Got it. Yeah, thanks again so much for the conversation. It's been really good. My question's around, because Walmart's a huge company. You mentioned just earlier that you've got maybe someone I imagine you have got people starting all the time and hiring and everything. So how do you maintain that culture of, or like that focus on the cost savings when people are coming in and I suppose at the risk of maybe diluting that focus, and basically coming in that you'll hire someone who's at a different maturity level with regards to FinOps. So how do you keep the organizational maturity high when you get new people coming in all the time?
So one of the things that you'll notice in all the models that I've presented is I'm not talking about a FinOps team that's centralizing all of this. Like, we have heroes throughout the org. We have architects. We actually have a guy named Jordan who is our Jordan, right? And he works on one of our teams, and he's a project manager, program manager, and he's focused on cost savings. We have other architects throughout the org that are focused on cost savings. The way that I try to encourage community and keeping this sort of culture of cost savings alive is really back to what I said earlier. Give as much credit to other people as possible. Get other people promoted for paying attention to FinOps. Because then if you go forward 2 or 3 years, they'll remember how they got there. And they'll start to teach their people, hey, this is the way to get ahead here. Walmart has a core value of efficiency. We are looking into training, and we are going to probably invest in getting more people FinOps trained, 100%, including myself, by the way. I just want to call myself out. I'm not FinOps certified. But I think, how do we keep that culture alive? We reward it, and we value it, and we build the right relationships. Most important outcome of FinOps isn't saving money. It's building relationships with people about what the practice is. So, does that answer your question? Awesome. All right.
Yeah. So one of the challenge many of the FinOps teams are struggling is how to know what is the time before you can see results. So especially when you start a new FinOps team, do you need to wait for a month, a quarter, or a year before you start seeing your recommendations being implemented and getting the cost savings? That information will be super critical. And as you matured, are there things which you have totally automated where some things just happen automatically, or still it is engineering, we inform, but they need to take action?
It's a really interesting question. So how quickly can you expect it to work? I'll bring it back to, if you get the right conversation started, and we see this internally. We have some teams where we're like, hey, can you save some money? And immediately the next day, they're like, bam. The secret is we then take their cost curve and we bring it to an all-hands meeting. And we're like, everybody congratulate this team. They just saved an amazing amount of money. And people start to get the sense that hey, I want that to be us next. But the other thing I'd say is it's about communication. It's about the multiple levels of management. If they're all aligned and they're like, that cost savings goal needs to be met quick, right? If there's questions about the data or questions like, well, how did you get that data, and what does it really mean? We don't really trust your analysis, and if you don't have trust and good relationships, it might never even ever happen. So a lot of what you saw in my presentation was that open, transparent, relationship-oriented approach. That's what translates to the fastest savings. Yeah, I mean, I could talk for hours about anti-patterns, but does that make sense? Okay, awesome. All right. Thank you.
All right, so
We're
that,
done?
Yep,
All
that
right.
is our time. If you do have more questions for Tim, please feel free to catch him outside or during the conference. Until then, big round of applause,
All right,
Mr.
thank you.
Tim O'Brien from Walmart.
All right, thank you so much.
Thanks for watching that session. I'm sitting here in San Diego right after FinOps X. We hope you join us next year here live 2024. In the meantime, please subscribe to the channel and join the community. Get involved, join the summits, get in a working group, and don't forget to get FinOps certified. Because next year here in San Diego for FinOps X, it's going to be twice as big. Come join the party. Come meet your people. Welcome home.